Namaste. This is Yoga Therapy Podcast, and I'm your host, Shira, yoga teacher, yoga therapist, and Ayurvedic wellness educator. In these conversations with experts in the field of yoga therapy, you'll find out what it is and how it can help you and your loved ones to reclaim well-being. We'll touch on physical as well as mental health, physiology, emotions, women's health, spiritual well-being, goddesses, and self-development in the fullest sense. Listening to another story can change ours, so thank you for showing up, and let's begin this journey together.
Let's see.
Yay!
Yay! All right.
So, hello everyone. I am so happy to be back here today. We have Ghada Osman with us. She has her PhD. She's a psychotherapist, a licensed marriage and family therapist. She is the author of Mental Health and Emotional Healing through Yoga. And she is a certified and I mean accredited yoga therapist, no?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, so welcome and thank you for being here. Yes.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. Okay, so let's begin. So you're working a lot with relationships, both professional and relationship issues, anxiety, depression, trauma, PTSD, grief, loss, separation, divorce, wow, serious illness and other life transitions. You lead trainings and a variety of topics for yoga teachers and professionals. So I would like you to tell me how you arrived here and how you found yoga and how you are now incorporating yoga therapy into your mental health practice.
Absolutely. So I first came to yoga in 1997 at the gym. So it was a regular yoga class at a gym. Would have never imagined that it would lead me to where I am today. So I remember at the time I took the class and, felt like I really resonated with it. But I noticed the difference where afterwards I got in my car, and typically after whatever class I took, step aerobics or whatever it was back then, I'd get in the car and turn on the radio and kind of blast the music. And with this, I got in the car, automatically turned on the radio, and then was like, no, I like the quiet. I like the stillness. Like I'm experiencing something I've never experienced before. And that was kind of the beginning of my introduction to yoga. I am someone who never imagined that I would be into yoga. I thought of these things as kind of, not very cerebral to like woo-woo. I thought of myself as kind of a logical person. And I was like, that was amazing. I feel so calm. I feel so centered. And that drew me to yoga. But for the longest time, yoga for me was just about being calm, was about kind of turning down the chatter in my mind. And the piece that had to do with healing through yoga really came much later for me.
Okay.
So
can I just ask, were you already a mental health professional at that time?
So I was in grad school at the time.
Okay.
So, and that was what then connected me to take my first yoga teacher training. So I got more into yoga, but still mainly at the gym, and then thought, I'd like to take a yoga teacher training more to just deepen my practice and kind of help myself to balance myself out with all the headiness of my degree program. Mm-hmm. And again, totally expected it to just be personal. Thought, no, I'm never really going to teach yoga. Took my YTT at the Kripalu Center in 2000.
Oh, wow. That's good. Yeah.
Yeah. It was a
one of their teachers in Thailand, Balaram Chandra Das. Do you know him?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He gave a yoga therapy training immersion in Thailand. And he had so much knowledge, and the way he taught was so integral and bringing everything in. I thought it was lovely. I don't know if all of the Kripalu curriculum is like that.
Yeah, it was very holistic. So I actually so at the time I lived in Massachusetts, and I looked around several yoga programs, and that was by far the most powerful one. It was a very thoughtfully put together program. The basic yoga teacher training was just teaching 26 asanas. and kind of really learning, but not just learning how to teach them, but how to really be in them. And that was what was very different for me, was the experience of being in the practice in
Yeah.
these ways that are so very, very different. And that was kind of the beginning of my now understanding and connecting with yoga as healing.
Yeah.
I was like, there is something that happens in me that's so different from when I do anything else.
Mm.
So I took my yoga teacher training and then thought, you know what, I'd like to do the 500 hour as well, and did that. And by that time, I was back in California, and so would travel to Massachusetts, 3,000 miles each time to add up the hours for my 500-hour training, and then began incorporating. So I did a lot of private teaching yoga and kind of started incorporating some mental health elements here and there.
Mm.
And then so I became I did the 500 hour 2003, and then by maybe 2009, 2010, I was really incorporating a lot of yoga, that as I was doing my mental health work, um, talking only gets so far, right? And when we talk,
Yeah.
we can talk until the cows come home, but
It
that
doesn't
doesn't really
change.
get at the core of what's going on, right? Kind of the different part of the brain. That's all prefrontal cortex. It's all the logical executive function part of the brain. And so as I was doing more talk therapy, I was like, no, there's so much more here. Let me try this. Let me try that. And that's when I started incorporating more yoga work with my clients.
Okay. And was that a very gradual, I imagine also very careful, like just trying one little thing in a session?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I tried several things. And one of the things, too, until I came to develop this for myself, back then there was really not very much written about yoga and mental health at all, actually, almost
Really?
nothing.
20 years ago?
Yeah. Yeah.
And even
So, well,
now,
if we're talking
I find it's still very small, isn't it? The selection.
very small. I mean, even when I was doing research for my book, which came out in 2018, there's been so much research done on mindfulness and
Mm,
mindfulness-based
exactly.
stress reduction, but
Yeah.
very little done on yoga.
Yeah.
So in the late 2000, so sort of like, yeah, 2008, 2009, 2010, there still wasn't that much. And so I was really experimenting a lot. And the way that I would first experiment, of course, is I would take something that fit for me and try it on a client.
Yeah, of course.
And we're
Your
all
own
different,
experience. Yeah.
right? And so I remember once, the breath of joy that I find very joyful felt very destabilizing for a client. And I'm like, okay, what are kind of the more general themes going on here? And that's when I started to think of this in terms of sort of more paradigms, more patterns.
Okay. Oh,
And then
is
started kind of
that what your
incorporating
book
more.
is about? These paradigms? Yeah.
Yeah, so my book basically introduces working with yoga in a way that fits a particular model that's also very straightforward.
Okay.
One of the things that happens is that we tend to think that what helps people when they're experiencing emotional crisis is calming practices.
Depends.
And exactly. And calming practices, if I feel hyper aroused and anxious and you ask me to be calm, it's the same as saying to someone who feels angry, calm down. We know that doesn't happen. That's not what the system does. And so it was, yeah, figuring out what these more general paradigms were.
Yeah, I've also
So,
found that. Yeah.
yeah,
It's even more triggering because trying to calm down just shows you how not calm you are. On a
exactly.
very clear level, which is frightening sometimes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. All it does precisely is show you how dysregulated your system is, understandably.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's so ultimately it's like a calming practice when we're feeling hyper aroused like that. Yeah, it's like saying to calm down. It's like that's not how our system works. So kind of figuring out, so yeah, like you said, I introduced things a little bit, tried different things, and I'm like, okay, I think this is kind of the paradigm, and then went forward in that direction, and then um, over the past decade, that's when I began offering trainings for yoga therapists as well as yoga teachers if they're interested in deepening their work in mental health, as well as in psychotherapists interested in incorporating yoga.
Okay.
So
Oh,
ultimately, one of the things that I tell everyone is yoga teacher trainings, they may be for your general population yoga class, but we all have mental health.
yeah.
Every person that we interact with has emotions, right? And so pretending that we don't need to, that we can like have a straightforward thing that fits everyone, and that you're either a person who works on mental health or you don't, is completely unrealistic. We all need to know how to work with mental health.
Yes, yes, especially in our world because we are so mentally aligned. Everything is about mind. We are here to produce, to force, to use our will. And this is all mind. We're just mind based, create constantly. It's all this stuff that's got to come in through the mind, and we've got to produce something from it really quickly, decision making, all these things constantly. I once did a Vipassana, and I was in India at the time, in the little town of Dharamsala. I don't know if you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, have you been there?
I haven't been there, but I've heard the name.
Okay, so Dharamsala is where the Dalai Lama lives. So there's a Vipassana center there, and it's a tiny little town. And I did the 10 days. And after 10 days, you really stop thinking because you've been meditating 11 hours a day. First, you're just struggling with your mind. It's like a spoiled brat. But then once
monkey mind.
spoiled brat, yeah, but it's really like, first it's just being creative and fantastic, and you get lost in all the thoughts. And then it starts to realize that you're not listening, and it starts throwing horrible thoughts at you. The inner critic starts to come out, and then you're still not listening, or you're trying to ignore it. And then everything just comes out. But when I finally came out of that 10 days, we could go out of those gates, and there were so many choices. And there were choices. Would I walk through the forest to the town? Would I walk on the path or on the road? And then I realized this is just a very small choice I have to make.
Yeah.
People have to make huge choices all the time. When we live in a stressful city, you are constantly bombarded with choices and decisions. It's exhausting.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
it was just having that realization that we have so many choices at every little step.
Yeah, we do. And for many of us, we're in cultural contexts where making the best choice is so important, and success and achievement and all these things.
Yeah.
One example I often give is the swimming pool at the gym where, I typically swim, has all these lovely things on the wall that are like achieve, succeed. But every time I look at it
At a
as a swimmer,
swimming
how
pool.
about enjoy, relish,
Like
experience?
feel your body in the water.
Exactly.
Experience water going up your nose.
Exactly. So yeah, well, achieve, succeed. So yeah. And it's like, okay, well, no
California.
wonder then the mind is doing its thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then it's working with all of these elements. And ultimately, I think it's like there are asanas and there are pranayamas and there are mudras, etc. But one of the biggest pieces about this being yoga therapy versus physical therapy or anything like that is that noticing, right? That witness consciousness, that mindfulness, that it's like that is ultimately where emotional healing comes in. Can I feel myself escalating and notice that? And that's what these practices are. And so a lot of the time, I think we think of, I do this and automatically I feel better this way. And that comes with time. But can I do that and notice the shift in me? That is already so, so powerful. And that's kind of a large part of the core of the work that I do, and the work that I started doing with clients in my psychotherapy practice, and then have continued to do and to give trainings is, what's like one very common thing that I often ask clients, and that in trainings I often ask is, what's one word that describes your body right now? So yeah, outside of all of this, and do I choose this path or do I choose this path, whether literally like you're saying or metaphorically, is right now in this moment, what's one word that describes how my body feels? Just the whatever it is that comes to mind. It's like that's a very different way of being.
Yeah, and it's like you say, it's being rather than doing, and just
Exactly.
experiencing, staying with the discomfort or the fear or whatever arises. And yeah, I wanted
Yeah.
to just come back to something. You talk about emotions a lot. That's one thing I want to put a pin on. But
Hmm.
the other thing is, when did you realize that yoga wasn't enough? When did you choose to do a yoga therapy training? Was there a point that you realized, okay, I need to go further, or there's something that's still missing for the integration?
So I was actually grandparented into being a yoga therapist. So I did, yeah, where I had now by the time that, IAYT and the CIAYT designations came out, I had now done so many hours of giving what would then in time be called yoga therapy that, yeah, I was grandparented in.
Okay.
And so I've taken training, like I've taken Phoenix Rising training, etc. But yeah, my actual designation comes from experience. And it
Yeah.
was interesting actually at the moment when that came up to go back and to think back. I thought of my very first client with whom I had worked, and I had worked with her on grief and just all the different things that we worked on. And I had a very distinct memory of her body being in a particular, also being in cobra, and my, like, just kind of placing my hand here and the opening and kind of the surrender, like all these different pieces. um and so yeah, so I feel like it's been an amazing journey and kind of an honor to be with people as all of this has grown and developed, and as the field has grown and developed.
Yeah, beautiful. Very
Yeah,
nice. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So you
Yeah.
said you wanted to put a pin on emotions.
Yes, because I read in on your website, and I think also your article that you'd written, that you spoke about emotions. And for me, it's been a big thing always as a child, very emotional, and I thought it was a good thing. But then you're often shut down, like, don't be so
Right.
emotional, and why are you reacting that way? But since I've embraced my emotions and learn to hold them and hold space for them, they've become my power. They've become I've
Hmm.
realized there's just a passion underneath everything I want to do and say
Yeah.
and feel and share. And so I think, yeah, we need to really talk about emotions much more. And you talk about them a lot. So do you think that they are the main issue when we're talking about mental health? Because I've noticed that
Yeah.
when we're talking about mental health, you keep coming back to emotions as if that's the main kind of affect.
Yeah. So I am a big believer in talking about emotional health rather than mental health. First of all, I feel that mental health, unfortunately carries stigma. The term carries stigma, and the stigma is decreasing over time, and nonetheless is very much there. People, the way that we talk about mental health in common discourse is it's like mental health issues, mental health
Like there's always
problems.
a problem.
Ooh, it's not like that.
Gestures are good. Yeah, that's why I love Spanish, French, and Italians. They have a lot of gestures. It's
A lot of
expressive. It's that emotion.
exactly. Good Mediterranean gestures. Yeah. So I'll back up a little bit then when
Yeah.
when you ask that. So yeah, we often talk about having, yeah, mental health issues, mental health problems, and ultimately mental health is something we all have because we all have emotions. And so I like first of all, mental health also does suggest that there is that divide between mental health and physical health. And when we say there is a mind body connection, it's not just that there's a mind body connection, it's like the mind is part of the body, right? And so this is all one. Emotions are what we have. We all have emotions. Those of us who are deemed too sensitive, all it is that we show our emotions rather than hide our emotions. So, yes, people may be impacted in differing ways to different things. People may not have as much of what we look at and think of as an emotion, a deep emotional response to something. Still an emotional response. If I see something come by and I'm like, oh, that's nice. That's still an emotional response. Just because I didn't laugh loudly or cry loudly, That's emotion. Like we all have emotions, rather than deciding what's appropriate and what's not appropriate and kind of squashing it down. So yeah, I'm a firm believer in talking about emotional healing and emotional health.
Yeah, yeah, and I completely agree with you, and I would even add to that that emotions, I've come to realize they are so amazing and so powerful because they are what we build every relationship on top of, is an emotion. They bind us, they connect us. It is because we are social that we have these emotions, and they keep us together. And the more we see our society kind of falling apart, the more you're seeing that people are less emotional, and that this is a good way to divide people, is to not be emotional, to separate us.
And when we say someone is emotional, it's usually the emotion that we're thinking about that we're seeing a lot is something that often leads to crying. So sadness, anger that leads to crying, etc. But yeah, everything is an emotion.
Yeah,
Happiness is an emotion. But yeah, we just because somebody experiences an emotion that from the outside looks like it's at a high level, and someone else from the outside looks like it's at a low level,
it's still
we have no
experiencing.
idea what's happening internally. We have
Yeah,
no idea.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I agree. One conclusion I came to through writing my book was that we have feelings and emotions, and I see this, the difference is only that emotion is something that is moving through us to go out, whereas feeling is something coming in us, and we
Mm,
experience it and perceive it, and the emotion is a reaction to that. Is, and if it doesn't, if we don't express it, it stays, like you wrote somewhere in your article, issues in our tissues. It becomes that thing that stays stuck in the body, or the mind, body mind. Yeah.
yeah. And then over time, our body starts warning us. So at the beginning, I might like, there's something happening in my life that doesn't fit for me. And, I feel angry, I feel sad, I squash it down. Well, over time, right, I start developing physical symptoms.
Yeah.
It's like the body's like, oh, you're not getting this. You're not going to stop doing that. Okay, watch this. Here's a stomach ache. Watch this. Here's a headache, because now this will make you stop doing it, right? The other thing that I would like to say about emotions is when we think of babies, if there is a baby and we don't see emotion in the baby, we're concerned, right? We don't see the baby smiling, laughing, crying. It's like, ooh, what's wrong? But so we know that this is what's natural. But then somehow over time, it's like, oh no, this is inconvenient because it's uncomfortable for me as the person on the receiving end, because I don't know how to deal with emotions,
Mhm.
because I feel scared. And so I want to bring that down. And yeah, all of that is in our body. It's like our
Mhm.
bodies store all of that,
And how,
whether they're connected with images or not.
yeah, yeah, I totally agree. And how much of this suppression do you think is due to societal rules?
Very
And
much so.
yeah,
Yeah, very much so. Societal rules, regardless of the culture we grow up in,
yeah,
we have norms, right? And so we have to toe the line. And then on top of that is the norms that we have that are based on certain elements of identity, gender,
mm,
age. So
mm,
absolutely, yeah. You're of this group, so you should respond emotionally this way. Here's the limited range that you're allowed to operate in. And more than that, that's not appropriate. Yeah, yeah,
mm,
they're all ways of trying to make things more predictable
yeah,
so that we can feel we're in control and more comfortable.
yeah. Oh
That's
God, it's again that control thing, isn't it? Such fear
yeah.
is life. Life is unpredictable. I had this very short, like, relationship or dating experience with a scientist. And so I was telling him very passionately about my book and about emotions, and he just thought it was nonsense.
Yeah, no
Because
scientist has ever worked on emotions, right?
exactly. It was like, no,
Yeah.
no. And he was totally in this control bubble, like everything needs to be controlled, and we will, at some point, science will be the ruling thing. And it's like, no, the thing about life, we cannot recreate life. And it's
Right.
The reason it exists, I mean, you can cut open a seed, you will not see anything special in that seed, but you have taken something out of it. Once it's cut open, it has lost that essence of life, which is yoga, we call prana. Yeah, and therefore it will not germinate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Measure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the idea that that emotions don't matter suggests that then all of us are in fact the same.
Yeah.
That what is it that makes you and me different? Sure, our outward appearances are different, but are we really interchangeable? Because, or is it only our skills, our histories? No, of course not. We know that what makes the difference is our emotions.
Yeah, and it's why you love someone, and that's why we're all in panic that we're going to lose someone to COVID or whatever, to death. It's because they are unique, because each one of us is special.
Exactly.
And you cannot clone us.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a fear, right? It's a fear always that if I see the emotion, it's going to be so big, I don't know what to do with it. And that's where, again, then yoga therapy is so different. It's like, no, if I'm with the emotion, I'm with it. The journey is for us now to be here together instead of me running away from it. And so therefore it chasing me even harder.
Yeah. And how do you see that emotions then affect our physiology? How do they do that, or our physical body?
So, it's interesting. It's like we're aware that they do, right? So there are certain things, and in the article that I think you read, I mentioned this. There are certain ways that we're used to thinking about emotions. Like we talk about, oh, I'm nervous, I have butterflies in my stomach, or I have a tightness in my chest, or I have, tension in my shoulders. So we know that. But for some reason, we're unwilling to go further than that in typical discourse. And of course, yeah, I mean, our emotions show up in our body so frequently and will show up from times that we can remember. So sometimes we know, oh, it's because of this. But most of the time, or all of the time, the physical sensation is there first. We notice it and notice the emotion, and then our mind races to find a reason for it. And sometimes, even despite the race, it can't find it. Right. And that's how we have these experiences where it's like, I don't know what's going on. Like there's so much here. I feel something stuck, or I feel a release, and I don't know why. And we don't need to know why.
Yeah.
That's the power of the body, is that memories are stored somatically in the body, right? Which both in yoga philosophy and now more and more in psychotherapy and psychotherapy modalities that are somatically oriented, we've become aware of that.
Yeah.
But it's like we hold memories in the body. Memories are not only images in the mind.
No. And how do we release them? How do you see it as being released through yoga and breathing? And
so one of the ways that I would say that my work has evolved over the years, and that I notice somewhat of a difference between my work and the work of some others, is I think there has been in the yoga world, and that parallels in the therapy world, this idea that intense release is powerful. And that, for example, if I have somebody be in a back bend and they hold, and there's a lot of release, that's actually going to be cathartic and liberating. But it's only going to be cathartic and liberating if I'm ready. Otherwise, it's going to be terrifying. So if I am in this very vulnerable place and it's like, okay, and my intention is I'm going to push this and make the release happen. First of all, we know that's not how things go, right? That's when the body's like, no, I don't think so. I'm not ready to do this. But also, I need to feel safe enough in the present moment to be able to have one foot in the present and now one foot in the trauma, whatever that is.
yeah.
If I'm too far back there and I'm not here, I'm not going to be able to function day to day. We're not ascetics on a mountain, right? I need to be able to do my life. So if I can help someone release by first of all feeling more grounded, more in the present moment, even if it's just this moment right here with me in the session, and build that, then over time, now we can say, okay, your mind realizes that you're here. And now from here, can you potentially go back there and allow your mind to see that, you know what, you're not there anymore. You can let that go.
Mm.
If
Mm.
my mind doesn't know I'm here, why on earth should I let it go? If I let it go and I need it, then now I've shortchanged myself. So it's not going to do that. And that's why sometimes people can even have what looks like powerful releases, but they're destabilizing
Mm, of course.
because now their system is afraid of what they've let go of because maybe they'll need it. So it's like,
Mm.
rather than kind of almost the theatrics of the big release,
Mm.
I'm actually working with someone to strengthen the here and now, strengthen more. You're here. We're grounding. Let's ground some more.
Mm.
Now, when you feel more grounded and more present, now let's begin noticing what else is there.
Yeah, so you want to create a new pattern, a new habit, a habit of being present and centered and safe. And from that, you can move into the unknown, unsafe, triggering, intense, and slowly reconnect. It's like building a bridge. Is that what you?
Exactly.
Mm.
So you mentioned, for example, that one of the areas that I work with is PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
And PTSD is the most obvious one, but actually anxiety, depression, etc., can have these pieces too, where the mind acts like it's in the difficult situation because it's on alert. So I'm first helping the system to notice that I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
In this moment, at least with me in this session, the system doesn't have to be on alert. So I'm not going to make it calm, because if I calm it down and the system is hyper aroused, then that's when it's going to be like, what do you mean? No, I shouldn't be calm. No. But if I say we're just grounding and look around the room, that helps us be more in the present moment. The system is on board with that. I do open-eyed meditation. It's like, okay, I can be in the moment. I can flow with that. And so that's ultimately kind of the start of the work that then over time leads to that release.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we need to be more patient with
Yeah.
that process. Yeah. And you probably know it very well as a psychotherapist. Yeah.
Yeah. And believe that I don't have to see everything
Mm.
as the yoga therapist. I don't need to witness a big release for me to see that something happened. First of all, I can train myself to notice even the subtleties, right? But even it's not about me. I don't have to notice. It's about what the client.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, like you say, it's more a insight kind of thing, and the awareness, they will see it, and that will be the big change, because it's their experience rather than yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I get what you mean about the theatrics and it being an external.
Yeah. And about being the ego of the teacher, of the
Yeah,
therapist, ultimately. That's
yeah.
like, look what I made
I've
happen.
done.
Yeah, exactly. Versus, yeah, the client, the person in the session, if I ask the client for one word that describes how the person feels and the person says tense or nervous, and then I ask again at the end and the person says neutral, that's amazing.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
huge. It doesn't have to be joy and
No, no.
just, yeah,
But
here.
is there a lot of that? I can't imagine in the yoga therapy there's people trying to get those cathartic experiences. Maybe as yoga teachers there is that. But I think yeah.
I think that's something that's shifting. I
Okay.
think what happens still that we're all learning is the wish to not necessarily bring that cathartic release, but bring calm.
Mm.
What it takes to bring calm. So, for example, our typical yoga class, we start closing the eyes, focusing inward while closing the eyes. Again, if I feel nervous and you ask me to close my eyes, I don't feel so great, right? And hence,
Yeah.
trauma oriented practices, that's one of the pieces where they talk about eyes open. But yeah, I think that really wanting the person to feel good, to feel calm, I think one of the pieces that we have is that attachment, that
Yeah.
when we ask how someone feels, we want to hear something positive, otherwise we want to fix it.
Yeah. Yeah. I had that for a while, but I've learned also over the last 4 or 5 years that any change, and I think it was Balaram even who said that, you just want people to notice a change, and it doesn't, even sometimes it doesn't move in the right direction. Maybe sometimes we're not making it move towards neutral even, but to know that this practice makes you feel worse when you're in that state is also a good thing, because then you can go, okay, that's not the way to go right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And what is worse
Be
that I
honest.
feel more, is worse that, yeah. So also just noticing what worse is.
Yeah, yeah.
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 Yeah, and I think that that then comes back to the yamas. So honesty, being honest and not hurting yourself. So
Mhm.
compassion. I think a better word for non-violence is compassion, self-compassion or compassion.
Yeah, I agree. I
Yeah.
agree. Absolutely. Absolutely. And part of self-compassion is knowing the limits,
Mm,
right? So if I do things in a way where I'm not at my edge, am I being self-compassionate?
mm,
For some of us, they may be. So if I'm a person who tends to push, then I
mhm.
am being self-compassionate by holding back. But if
Yeah.
I'm a person that always holds back, maybe I'm being self-compassionate by
Pushing.
pressing a little bit
Yeah.
more,
Yeah, that's
right?
yeah.
Yeah. So just even that growth for ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, judging. Yeah. What is the medicine for us? Not
exactly.
compared to the other. Yeah, okay. Let's see. What else did I have written down? Yeah, I would like to go into hormones. That's one big thing that I studied. So
Hmm.
I think you wrote it somewhere that the way that yoga works is it increases our ability to produce GABA. So GABA is a hormone that minimizes anxiety and rumination and all the mental difficult patterns that we have in the West.
Yeah. One of the remarkable things about yoga is that yoga helps with that balance of both increases and decreases depending on what our body needs. And so, yes, there are several studies that have been done on hormones, so on cortisol levels, for example, on GABA, et cetera, where we see
Serotonin
the
as
difference.
well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, where we see the difference in practitioners over a certain amount of time. So yeah, and
Okay.
that
It does take
something
time.
very powerful.
It's not that you do a practice and you feel it.
It does take time. So one of the things about yoga is yoga shifts things both top down and bottom up.
Okay.
So top down in terms of the executive function of our brain helps us notice things differently. So that's when in a class, if someone says, notice how your breath is, or no, then it's like you make yourself notice it. And by making yourself notice it, the shifts happen. But at the same time, there's the bottom up, and that's what happens over time. That
Okay.
maybe over time, I don't need to notice my breath and make it slow down. It does that
Mm,
automatically.
mm,
And the same for hormone levels, that my body now has
mm,
shifted how it produces and what it produces because there's been a shift in my awareness of what my current situation is.
mhm,
I don't need to be so anxious.
mhm.
There isn't, it's like, yeah, evolution wise, my body is trained that if there's a bear coming this way, I'm going to run out that way. And I'm not going to wait to make sure that it's a bear because maybe if I wait long enough, I'll be dinner. And so I generalize. And over time, it's like we're kind of teaching that discernment of noticing that, okay, well, yeah, I need to notice if it's big, maybe it's a bear, but if it's small, maybe it's not a bear and I don't need to jump up like that. Those are the shifts that happen that then lead to the shifts in hormones that we notice in yoga practitioners over time and that are especially focused when it comes to yoga therapy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I find it very fascinating because in high school I studied chemistry and I was going to go on to university to do chemistry. So for me, it's very interesting to see how those hormones affect us so strongly. And I find there's just a lack of research done on hormones, because if we think about all the drugs people are taking for all their afflictions and conditions, it's mainly hormones or hormone suppressors. So if
Right.
people would be more educated in hormones, there's so much autonomy and self-agency that we have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like it's a little bit of both, right? So it's like there's so much that we can control. There are things that we definitely that are harder to control, and that's that balance, right? It's like, how do we find out what we can control? And that also varies in our bodies, and that's part of the work too in yoga therapy.
And is
Is what do I discover I can control versus what you may be able to control or
yeah.
someone else.
And is that due to then, if you're talking about taking, for example, antidepressants, is that because people have also a very long habit of producing those hormones that they cannot produce the right amount of serotonin and need?
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes too, so it's like we have, in my opinion, we have predispositions to things, and then something usually happens that kind of kicks that in.
So you mean
So
genes and epigenetics?
a little bit, yeah. So we have, so again, you and I can experience the same event, and maybe I afterwards experience depression and you experience anxiety. Or so it's like, what is it that makes us experience things differently, even though we're the same? Or a third person may experience nothing and move on, right? But there's a little bit of a predisposition to things.
Yeah.
That whether genetically or our, chemistry,
Or our
there's
past.
something in place, or our past or our generational past, right? And talking about epigenetics, there's something there, and then something kicks it in.
Hey, so I'm just popping in here to say I was a little tired last night when I was speaking to Ghada. So I didn't remember about the receptors of each cell. So each cell of each, in everyone's body, can receive any single hormone. But when we are constantly triggered by certain emotions, certain relationships, certain patterns, our cells, receptors, either start to shut down to certain hormones that we don't produce a lot because of the lifestyle we live, the people we hang out with, the foods we eat, the exercise we do or don't do. So all these things affect each single cell and its ability to receive every single hormone or chemical composition. So when we use a receptor again and again, it becomes much more sensitive also. It wants and it seeks and it is more open. It is stronger. It's that use it or lose it principle again. And it's the same when we don't create a certain hormone enough because we don't do the exercise, we don't eat the right food, we have these relationships that are destructive to us and prevent us from producing or absorbing and receiving those hormones that are actually already within us. That's when you start to understand the power of yoga therapy. We create different patterns. We create that insight to see which patterns are preventing us from feeling happy or feeling what Ghada said in the very beginning when she was about to turn on that radio, realizing, having that insight that actually I feel good and I just want to stay with that feeling that I have right now. I don't need to distract myself or use whatever it is that we're using these days, such as devices, to entertain or take away our awareness from the very moment that we are in, which is our only power moment. So this is one thing Louise Hay always said, was the power of now is the only place where we can make change. And that is what's happening to a lot of us, is we are not in the present. And so therefore we are losing and giving away our power. So I'm just going to leave you with that.
So then I feel like, our work in yoga therapy is complementary. I'm big in it being complementary rather than alternative. Okay. If someone
and being an autonomy, sorry, I get very excited.
So it's like if someone is able to not be on antidepressants and that fits, then that fits that person. If someone's dose goes down because of the yoga therapy, that fits that person. If someone's dose is exactly the same and day to day they feel different, that's wonderful too. That's what fits for that person as well. But there has been such a history one way or another, and we're also programmed to believe that what we put in our body physically makes a difference.
Yes,
right. When we're little, so it's like our body responds to that.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's again why we need those healthy habits and make that the pill.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly. It's like we have to be on board, right? So my system
yeah.
has
Oh,
to be,
totally.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it may be, yeah, it may be that my system that fits for it, and it may not be that my system, yeah, it may never fit for it. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's the beauty, I think, of yoga therapy. And one of the things that is very different in yoga therapy versus, yoga teaching and even individual yoga lessons is that yoga therapy is very geared to the client. So rather than I've learned this and I'm going to apply it, it's like a dance,
Mm.
right? Where are we going? And okay, let's try this. No, this doesn't quite fit for you, and
Yeah,
etc.
there's moments of like ambivalence. Yeah,
Yeah,
finding out, exploring together. It's very
yeah, yeah, definitely.
yeah. Okay, lovely. Thank you for adding that. Um, hmm, yes, you said something. Oh, well, you've mentioned that now. So it's specific because I was going to ask why a yoga therapist trained in mental health issues is a better option than just going to yoga classes. But yeah, you've
Yeah.
explained that.
I
Okay.
will say to you, a typical yoga class follows a curve that tends to work for certain people and not so well for others. And that's
Okay.
why a lot of the time we find people who are prone to kind of more generalized anxiety
Mhm.
tend to feel better after your typical vinyasa yoga class
Okay.
than people, for example, who have generally been diagnosed with depression. That's kind of more of what we think of as the typical
Mhm.
depression, the low energy kind of kapha depression. Um, that the start slow and then lots of sun salutations and then slowly coming down. And that fits. If I'm high anxiety and you have me do a lot of sun salutations, that matches me.
Yeah.
And then I gradually slow down. But if I came in low energy, the sun salutations, right, they don't work for me.
Mhm.
And so the a typical vinyasa class has that pattern. A restorative class, for example, has a different pattern.
Mhm.
They're set patterns and they work for certain people really well, but yeah, they're not geared to anyone.
Everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, they're geared, so it's like they work
Yeah.
for the person for whom this is a fit, and that's a very
I think
different.
that's the most difficult thing for yoga teachers. I know I was always um, shocked, kind of. Also, when you're very insightful and you see all the different people and you realize, okay, they've got anxiety, he's depressed, that one wants this, he's got a knee problem, and then you're trying to create a class for everyone every time. It can be so exhausting because you're taking in consideration all these things. So I have a plan now for a class, which I did it in the beginning and then I had to drop every plan. Now I have these kind of plans, which I can improvise on and off. But what I've done is I've done them according to the season. So we'll do 1 month in the winter, it's much slower.
Mm-hmm.
Build up slowly as we move towards the summer, that we're moving into a more fast and dynamic, and then we slow down again. So we're moving with
Mm-hmm.
the seasons, but then obviously within the class and depending on the people there and the mood,
Yeah,
do it that
exactly.
again.
How can we match? Absolutely. And
Yeah.
like you said, by the time we gear towards this injury and that injury, and then sometimes maybe we're giving an alternative just to make it work where, I mean,
That's,
I know I've only done this in class where kind of the outward form seems similar enough for the
mhm.
person with the injury. But that's actually a very different experience internally, potentially, right? If I had everybody in plank and I say, oh, for you, you can be on all fours, it's actually a very different experience energetically,
Yeah.
right? Being in plank, that's like an energizing pose. It has very little contact with the floor. It's really, just the hands and the tips of the toes versus being on all four. I'm actually all fours. I'm actually pretty stable. I don't feel that heating in the same way. Very different experience
Yeah.
internally.
Yeah.
But it's like closest I'm approximating in terms of shape. So yeah, very, very different approach.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's what I've come to as just a yoga teacher is more understanding what are we trying to do within the body? What effect are we trying to have? What energetic, emotional kind of quality are we trying to bring about? And then it doesn't really matter which shape you use.
Exactly. Shape is secondary, exactly. And that's often what I say with emotional health. Yeah, what is it that we're doing? Are we grounding?
Mhm.
Are we building up energy? Are we decreasing? Are we bringing about calm? And
Mhm.
yeah, how does that reflect internally? And yeah, the shape is secondary.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Ghada. You're so wise and so wonderful. You're a wonderful guest. Is there something
Oh,
you would like to share? Would you like to do a little practice or anything else you'd like to leave us with?
sure, I'd love to do a little practice and just like a very easy practice. So easy in terms of we were just talking about shape, that the shape really doesn't matter. So this is going to involve just a few movements of breath.
Okay.
So it can be done seated, can be done standing, can be done lying down, whatever works. But part of what I'm sharing here is that idea of grounding and focusing on the present moment that then helps if we are in what we call sympathetic nervous system hyperarousal. I feel very anxious. This helps me be in the moment. So it's not calming, it doesn't bring me in and down, but rather it helps me be here. So in terms of even my body language, if I think of my body kind of sitting with a straight spine, with my focus being outward, or as straight a spine as works for me, and my focus being outward, thinking about symmetry on the two sides of the body, again, doesn't have to look symmetrical on the outside, but feel symmetrical for me on the inside, and helping bring that focus out. So I'll just do a few movements here and just kind of noticing. So yeah, going to invite you, if you were to think of one word that describes how your body feels right now, whatever it is, just noticing that word, filing it away. And now reaching the crown of the head up towards the ceiling or towards the wall behind you if you're lying down. Bringing the shoulders down and back any amount. And then bringing the hands by your sides. And inhaling and bringing the arms up to shoulder level. The palms are up. And then bringing the arms all the way overhead and now looking up, allowing the hands to come towards each other. And notice as you look up and they come towards each other, the shape that's formed by the hands as they come towards each other. And then exhale and bring the hands down, eyes remain open, hands come down directly in front of you and pressing the palms into each other. Fingers are spread wide and pressing the fingers into each other, so feeling the contact between the hands. And now inhale, bring the arms out again, palms face forward to a T. Really reach through the fingertips. Imagine you're trying to touch whatever it is that's to the sides of you. And then exhale once more, bring the palms together, press the palms into each other and press the fingers into each other. Release the hands down and just notice here, taking a breath in and a breath out. And noticing again, now here, one word that describes how your body feels right now. First word that comes to mind might be the same word, might be a different word, just noticing. From here, allowing the eyes to open if you close them. And now interlacing the fingers together in front of you and then pressing the arms forward so they come, the arms are parallel, tucking the chin into the chest. Inhale and bring the arms up overhead, fingers are still clasped, look up. Notice as you exhale here, keep the arms here, but relax the shoulders. And again, inhale, reach the arms up overhead, look up. Exhale, relax the shoulders. Releasing the arms down by your sides. And once more, notice here. Notice the arms. Notice the breath. Notice one word that describes how your body feels. Allow the breath to return to wherever it was before. And now just coming into whatever movement feels natural for you right now, or stillness, whatever feels like it resonates. And now taking a moment here to open your eyes, if they're closed, and just taking a look around the room, allowing the gaze around the room to be slower, but at the same time you're noticing what's there, and just notice 5 things that you see. 4 things that you're touching or are touching you, and you can move your hands to touch things if you wish. 3 things that you hear. You may hear 3, you may not. 2 things that you smell. And 1 taste in your mouth. And taking 1 more breath in, 1 more breath out. And allowing your focus to return to the present moment, to whatever it was that you may have been doing before, whatever it is you may wish to transition to now. All right.
Thank you. That is so centering. And it's like you said, it's calming in the sense that it brings you together, because I feel awake, but and not sleepy, but also not too alert. It's very nice, very good. Yeah.
Good. I'm glad. Yeah. For me personally, it feels the same way. I feel centered. And I feel for me personally like my arms are more alive.
Yeah, because you're
I
so
feel more, more energy in my extremities.
Yes.
Especially
Yeah.
arms.
And the arms are like an expression of your heart, but at the same time they were strong, using that pressing. That was really great. And being very aware of them and just bringing the energy back there. Lovely.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your experience with that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's really nice how everyone teaches something so different, and it just needs to be something very simple and it's so effective.
That's always the reminder, like we were saying, the shape is the shape, but yeah, the inward experience, it's very different.
Yeah. Thank you, Ghada. So tell the listeners your work, where they can find you. I will put it all in the show notes, but if you want to share with us anything new that you're doing, trainings or workshops.
Thank you. Yeah, so all my work is actually available on my website, ghadaosman.com. So GhadaOsman.com. And in there especially is a video series that I have for yoga, for stress and anxiety relief in particular. So it's a series. It was actually supposed to be in person way back at the beginning of the pandemic, and we made it into videos. And I was like, you know what? This is helpful regardless. It was especially helpful and continues to be helpful now. It will continue to be helpful.
Now even more.
Right. So yeah, it's 3-hour-long practices and then 5 10-minute practices. So depending on kind of the availability of your time. So that's on the website. These are all on the homepage. And then on the homepage is also my book, Mental and Emotional Healing Through Yoga, and you can link to different vendors and kind of find out more about that. And as well as my training. So I give a training twice a year on therapeutic yoga for mental health. And it's open to yoga therapists, yoga teachers, as well as psychotherapists, but actually really it's open to anyone with background either in yoga or in psychotherapy, or of course both. So while most people taking it are yoga therapists or yoga teachers or psychotherapists, it's certainly open as long as someone has background in one or the other or both. So you'll find information on that too. Next one coming up is via Zoom in February. So February 5th and 6th.
Oh, wow.
Following weekend. So 5th and 6th. And then the following weekend, 12 and 13, and then 18 through 20. So there is a 100-hour certification. So those are the dates for the 100 hours. But there's also, there are different variations. So the first weekend basically provides insight into mental health for anybody who one works with. So it's kind of more of an introduction of working with emotional health. And then the 40-hour certification, which is the first 2 weekends, is specifically focusing on working with trauma, including working with PTSD. And then the full 3 weekends, the focus there, in addition to what I just mentioned, is also working with addictions, eating disorders, etc. So ways that basically when we use other things to turn away from feeling the feelings, and how to work with therapeutic yoga with that.
Yeah.
So yeah, please check it out. And yeah, please don't hesitate to reach out to me with any questions or comments.
Yeah. Same here. I'll just plug in there.
I love that. Yes, please. Reach out to both of us with questions.
Yeah. Hey, it's been really lovely, Ghada. Thank you so much for sharing your beautiful work and wisdom and your journey.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure chatting with you and sharing things with you and learning from you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay, we'll say goodbye to our listeners. Oh, I keep talking to the microphone. That's not working. Bye, listeners.
Bye-bye. Thank you for joining us.
So thank you everyone for staying to the end of the podcast. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. I really love doing these talks with these amazing people. And if you want to know more, just take a look in the show notes. There's plenty of links and ways to connect with either the guest or myself. If you want to work with us or find out more about us, just check out the information in the show notes. So I hope you have a wonderful weekend or week, and you'll be hearing from me next week. Bye.